Before the college entrance examination, I secretly took the love letter the school beauty wrote to my childhood sweetheart, which led to them not getting together. He hated me for a lifetime, even after discovering my secret crush on him. He said I was jealous and vicious, and that he would never like me. Later, we died in a car accident. Before dying, he said that if he could do it all over again, he begged me not to ruin his good relationship with the school beauty, as he wished, this time around. I didn't take the love letter, and then, in order to enter the same school as the school beauty, he gave up the multiple-choice questions in the comprehensive science exam. 1. After the college entrance examination results were announced, Gu Fei and Jian Chuyan got together. At the graduation party, his romantic act of giving up the multiple-choice questions in the comprehensive science exam for love spread widely, and he was called the god of pure love. I sat in a dim corner with a wine glass in my hand, looking at the two people surrounded by the crowd in the center, and took a sip of the juice in the glass. My best friend Song Xiao, who was beside me, was greatly shocked and couldn't understand. Is he crazy? He cut off his own future with his own hands, just for this uncertain future with Jian Chuyan. Yes, this time, he chose Jian Chuyan over his future, in the previous life. I secretly took the love letter before the college entrance examination to help him choose his future, but what I got was his hatred for a lifetime. Even after discovering my secret crush on him, he said to me with extreme disgust, "Wen Qian, I'm not interested in jealous and vicious people, your love makes me sick." In fact, I didn't hide the love letter from him. Instead, I returned it to him on the night after the college entrance examination. But when he took the love letter to find Jian Chuyan, what he got was a rejection. "Gu Fei, our grades are so different, we won't be in the same school at all. How can we be together, be apart for 4 years? The boyfriend I need is someone who can be by my side anytime and anywhere. Can you do that?" After the dejected Gu Fei came back, he gave me a cold look. The next day, his parents hurriedly came to me and said that Gu Fei planned to change the target university he had already decided on, and asked me to persuade him. I wasn't too surprised, but before I could say anything when I found Gu Fei, his eyes fell on me and he sneered. "What, stealing the love letter once wasn't enough? Wen Qian, do you want to come and ruin it again?" Standing at the stairway where the wind was blowing, although it was a sunny day, it was a bit cold. I looked down at him, who was decadent and irritable, and only said one sentence. "Gu Fei, it took you a full 12 years to get to where you are today." In the end, under the threat of his parents with their lives, Gu Fei gave up changing his volunteer, and he still didn't get to be with Jian Chuyan. Since then, I became the chief culprit who prevented him from being with Jian Chuyan and the target of his venting whenever he felt frustrated thinking about it. Until the last moment of his life, he was still resentful of me. In the bloody and pungent car, he begged hoarsely, "If I could do it all over again, Wen Qian, please don't think you know best and interfere to ruin our fate." So after being reborn, as he wished, I didn't take the love letter before the college entrance examination. Gu Fei smoothly saw the love letter, saw that Jian Chuyan said she liked him too, but was worried that the gap was too big and they couldn't make it together, so she hadn't responded for a long time. And then he directly cut off his own retreat without leaving any room for maneuver. He gave up the multiple-choice questions in the comprehensive science exam. He scored more than 100 points less than in the previous life. Finally, he successfully narrowed the gap with Jian Chuyan and got together with her. After several rounds of drinking, someone suddenly mentioned me, with a tone of emotion. At first, I thought Wen Qian would be the one to be with Gu Fei. After all, the two are childhood sweethearts and evenly matched, but Gu Fei immediately refuted it himself. Probably worried that Jian Chuyan would misunderstand, he said distantly, "Just ordinary friends who have known each other since childhood." I smiled silently and silently recited these 4 words: "Ordinary friends, too." But Gu Fei was right, we really have known each other since childhood. From the start of school to high school graduation, we were always in the same class, apart from my parents. The person who spent the most time with me was probably Gu Fei. I've seen him stay up all night to solve a problem, and he's seen me in a miserable state of still taking an exam with a fever of 40 degrees. No one knows better than us how much effort is needed behind the top 3 rankings that everyone says come so easily. On the day we entered high school with the first and second highest scores in the city, Gu Fei pointed to the first 2 photos on the honor roll of the college entrance examination on the publicity board and asked me, "In 3 years, it will be us here, Wen Qian, do you have confidence?" Behind the young man was the setting sun's glow on a summer evening, rich and gorgeous. In my ears was the ear-piercing cicada chirping, full of vitality. I held my books and looked at him sideways. Gufei, it's a deal. At that time, what we saw in each other's eyes was all the longing for the future, the desire for our ideals, and the determination to succeed. But soon, there was Jiang Qiuyan in Gufei's eyes. During that high school period when most students were slaving away for their dreams, Jiang Qiuyan was uniquely beautiful. At the cultural festival not long after the start of school, Jiang Qiuyan, wearing a white dress, stood in the center of the stage, like a bright moon falling. The hazy halo blurred everything around her. Only she alone entered the eyes of everyone present. After that night, Jiang Qiuyan's name spread throughout every class and became the white moonlight in the hearts of many teenagers. Gufei was one of them. The first time I noticed something was wrong was when he came back from delivering test papers for the math teacher to the next class. He sat in his seat with a slightly red earlobe. The test paper in front of him remained there for 4 evening self-study sessions, but he only wrote one question on the draft paper filled with dense calculation formulas. 3 inappropriate words appeared. Jiang Qiuyan, although he drew many horizontal lines over them with a pen, it couldn't cover the traces at all. Later, I heard that when he went to deliver the test papers, Jiang Qiuyan from the next class flirted with him. She accidentally bumped into Gufei's arms and hugged him while playing around with her friends, and Gufei, who was hugged, was stunned for a moment and then only said with a straight face, "Be careful." Jiang Qiuyan just looked at him and smiled. "Sorry, top student. Oh, and you're really handsome." Suddenly, there was a burst of hubbub around. Gufei, who had always been calm, reserved, and never showed his emotions, was flustered. Gufei and I were somewhat similar in character to a certain extent. We were rational and clear-headed, as calm as warm water, while Jiang Qiuyan was emotional and passionate, like an effervescent tablet thrown into warm water. And it was a beautiful effervescent tablet, so I wasn't surprised at all that Gufei was attracted to her. Just like in many idol dramas and novels, the personalities of the male and female protagonists are contrasting, and it is always publicized that people are attracted to those who are different from themselves. There are so many examples, such as the domineering president and the Cinderella, the top student and the underachiever, or the aloof flower and the warm little sun. At that time, I thought that even if Gufei was tempted, he should still understand what was most important, but he, who had always been calm, composed, and sensible, still rebelled for Jiang Qiuyan once. 3. I actually didn't know how he got familiar with Jiang Qiuyan. After all, being trapped in the heavy schoolwork every day left me with no time to spare. The most I talked to him about were the solutions to this problem, the answers to that problem, or whether we were ready for this exam. When I realized that he and Jiang Qiuyan were getting closer and closer, Jiang Qiuyan was already calling him bookworm and top student very skillfully, and Gufei's reaction clearly showed that he was already used to it. I started to notice that Gufei would leave for half an hour every noon to teach Jiang Qiuyan problems, and he would suddenly have something to do every weekend morning to participate in the small gatherings organized by Jiang Qiuyan. I knew that Gufei had fallen in love with her, but this couldn't make me stop and focus on their gradually deepening relationship. I continued to study hard, until the national physics competition in the second year of high school. The school had to select one student to participate through layers of screening. In the last round of the 5-to-1 selection, Gufei didn't come, because Jiang Qiuyan had a fever and fainted. After sending her to the hospital, at her request, Gufei chose to stay and accompany her in the hospital for the whole afternoon. I don't know how to describe my feelings at that time. I only remember that when I ran to the hospital to find him, all my emotions finally turned into a puzzled cry. Gufei, he leaned against the hospital corridor, with a calm expression, and only said one sentence, "I've lived a rule-abiding life for so many years, I always have to rebel once, right?" So he gave up the painstaking preparations he had made for so long and forgot about the nights when he had brushed questions while sick time and time again. At that time, looking at the handsome and elegant young man in front of me, I felt a moment of unfamiliarity, and even a trace of inexplicable tears welled up. However, I didn't say anything, but I knew very well that Gufei's behavior was not a good sign, so when he was about to face the second choice, I made the choice for him in advance. I took the love letter that Jiang Qiuyan gave him on the eve of the college entrance examination. Before that, I had actually prepared for Gu Fei to confess his love to her after the college entrance examination and then the two of them getting together. I had also prepared to send my blessings. However, I didn't expect that on the way to the meeting for the top 100 students in the grade, when I went back to the classroom to get my notebook, I would run into Jiang Qiuyan putting the love letter. In the empty classroom, she stood beside Gu Fei's seat, talking to her friend. The general meaning of the conversation could be summarized as, the reason she got close to Gu Fei was a bet with her friend to chase after Gu Fei, the top student in the grade, but during this process, she really fell in love with him. However, she felt that the gap was too big and they couldn't enter the same school, and she didn't want to be in a long-distance relationship. So even though she knew Gu Fei liked her, she always emphasized that the two of them were just classmates. Writing the love letter was to show her hope of going to the same university as him and also her intention to be with him. Before, I could be certain that Gu Fei would never give up his future for anything or anyone, but at that moment, I wasn't sure. To prevent that 1% possibility, after they left, I went in and took the love letter, countless times after that. When facing Gu Fei's sarcasm, I would repeatedly think about whether I was wrong back then. Once I tried to communicate with him calmly, Gu Fei, even if you had seen it in advance, what could you have done? Were you really going to give up your future just to be with her? He sneered and interrupted me with certainty. When Qian, I looked at him and was silent for a while. Finally, I smiled softly. For the first time, I realized that I was indeed wrong, terribly wrong. 4. As the party was coming to an end, Jiang Qiuyan, holding Gu Fei's arm, walked up to me and raised her glass to me with a beaming smile. When Qian, you've accompanied Gu Fei for 18 years, no matter how ordinary the relationship is, it's different from others, so, you will also bless us, right? I looked at the young man beside her, wearing a black t-shirt with a relaxed expression, and smiled and politely corrected her statement. I didn't accompany Gu Fei for 18 years. We just happened to be on the same road and walked together for 18 years. In the future, we won't be on the same road anymore. There are already so many people blessing you for happiness and a good life today. You don't need one more from me. I wish you a bright future. I was sincere. After all, we all came from ordinary families. After years of hard study, who wasn't striving for a good future in the previous life? After Gu Fei entered a top-tier university, he became the favorite student of the most prestigious professor in the physics department. He got to know a group of respected teachers and made countless like-minded friends. With the best resources in the country, he advanced with high spirits in his favorite physics research. The name Gu Fei repeatedly appeared in academic journals, and his figure could be seen talking eloquently at research conferences. His future was bright. The only regret was probably Jiang Qiuyan. His former white moonlight, that was his obsession for a lifetime. At occasional class reunions, when people mentioned her, it was always about who she was with, who she broke up with, or which rich second generation had confessed to her with a large amount of money. The last time I heard news about her was during the spring festival. She was going to get married. That night, Gu Fei drank himself drunk with his friends. When he came back, he knocked on my door. Coincidentally, my parents were not at home. As soon as I opened the door, he rushed in and taunted me with a fierce look. When Qian, you must be very happy now, right? She's getting married. Are you satisfied? I stood quietly beside the sofa and listened to him vent. Then I poured him a glass of warm water. Drink some water. He didn't take it. In fact, after so many years, I was also tired. Looking at his appearance as he gradually fell asleep after being overly emotional, I casually covered him with a blanket. After returning to the bedroom, I received gossip news from Song Xiao through her intricate WeChat moments. It is said that Jiang Qiuyan's fiancé is a nouveau riche. He fell in love with her at first sight at a friend's birthday party. Jiang Qiuyan had a boyfriend during the pursuit. At first, she didn't agree. Later, the nouveau riche started to spend money on her until she was willing to break up. I looked down at it in silence. Suddenly, I really wanted to know what the final outcome would be if Gu Fei had really given up his future for Jiang Qiuyan back then. Originally, I thought I would never know the direction of the other choice. Unexpectedly, I would go back to the past and everything would start over. Gu Fei finally got what he wished for. Looking at the two people who had returned to the center of the crowd and were being coaxed to kiss, I finished the juice in my glass and then turned around and left. I had hypothesized about the choice countless times before. Gu Fei's imagination was always that even if he and Jiang Qiuyan entered the same school, he could still reach the same height with his own abilities. In fact, no one could know the final answer, but, Gufei, I'll be waiting and seeing. 5, this time around. Except for Gufei's choice, nothing has changed. I still entered the same university as in the previous life with the same score and was admitted to the mathematics department I liked. During the entire holiday before leaving for school, I didn't see Gufei again, because he accompanied Jian Chuyan on a graduation trip. I found a part-time job tutoring junior high school students. Occasionally, when I went out and ran into Gufei's parents, I could see the bitter smiles on their faces when they greeted me and a few silver hairs in their black hair. I thought that they probably would never know why Gufei, who had never fallen out of the top 3 and was hard-working and talented, suddenly performed poorly in the college entrance examination. They were even worried that he would be too sad, so they would try every means to comfort him, force a smile in front of him, and let him go on a trip to relax for a moment. I didn't know which would be more bearable for them, knowing the truth or never knowing the truth, but looking at them, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sadness in my heart. After all, apart from my parents, they were the elders who had the most contact with me and watched me grow up. 6. For years can change a lot of things. The once green and tender teenagers and girls have now become mature and steady, talking about their plans for the future, sharing the competitions they participated in, and exchanging the job offers they received. They all have the halo of prestigious universities on their heads and have won numerous awards. Although they haven't entered society yet, their futures are promising. Because of the traffic jam, I arrived the latest. As soon as I entered the door, I was enthusiastically pulled into the center of the crowd. Due to similar experiences, I quickly joined the conversation. Just as I was gracefully communicating with them about my life in the past 4 years, someone suddenly pointed at me and pretended to be angry, saying, "You don't know, in our sophomore year, several universities jointly held a debate competition. Coincidentally, when Qian and I became opponents, at that time, we were overwhelmed by her complete logical loop. It was really, I didn't feel the friendship of my former classmates at all." I smiled at him and said, "You're too kind." He still didn't let me go and continued to tease. "I didn't expect that. When Qian, you always used to be quiet and gentle, but on the debate stage, you were extremely rational, pressing step by step and not giving an inch. I'm curious, do you act like this when you quarrel with your boyfriend?" This remark caused a burst of laughter. Then, someone seemed to suddenly remember something and turned to look at Gufei, asking him, "Hey, why isn't Jiang Chuyan here, our god of pure love? Didn't the school beauty come with you?" It was only then that I saw Gufei, who had been sitting in the corner of the private room without speaking. Like the others, he had also changed a lot. The humility and confidence in his eyes in the past had now completely dissipated. How should I put it? Although he was still quiet and reserved, sitting here now, he seemed a bit out of place. It was as if he was an ignored outsider. Those teenagers who had once enviously called him the god of pure love had now become young people who had received better resources and seen a bigger world. When this topic was brought up again, there seemed to be a somewhat subtle feeling. There was a faint hint of mockery and a sense of watching a joke in everyone's words. After all, he used to be the most powerful among these people. Now he didn't even have a topic to participate in the discussion. Song Xiao held a wine glass and sighed softly behind me. Sure enough, reality is reality, different from idol dramas. For years after a frame in an idol drama, perhaps the male protagonist would achieve great success after a counter-attack, but in reality, Gufei now was neither more handsome nor more successful. He was no match for anyone present. After all, a person's success cannot be completely attributed to their own efforts, platform, resources, connections, talent, opportunities, environment. Each of these is an essential condition. So the Gufei who was once famous in the physics world was now almost unknown. I wasn't surprised. Gufei, who was suddenly asked, was stunned for a few seconds and then looked at me. His Adam's apple rolled up and down, and he said in a very calm tone, "We broke up." 7. A few days after the party, my best friend Song Xiao came to share with me the gossip she had heard about Gufei and Jiang Chuyan. Shortly after they entered the university, under Jiang Chuyan's training, Gufei not only mastered the skills of taking pictures, retouching pictures, and choosing lipsticks, but also fought with other boys for Jiang Chuyan. I remembered that during that time, I indeed saw on WeChat moments that Gufei, who used to only occasionally forward physics-related information, would post some photos or videos of Jiang Chuyan every 2 or 3 days. At that time, I thought that true love could really change a person. However, when the passionate love period ended and they entered the plain water period, Gufei began to be busy with his professional courses, and Jiang Chuyan met more people in various activities. The two of them would occasionally have differences of opinion due to some disagreements. Jiang Chuyan disliked that Gufei didn't have time to accompany her because of the competition and frequently asked Gufei, who was concentrating on preparing for the competition, to accompany her out. And Gufei didn't understand the first cup of milk tea in autumn that Jiang Chuyan needed. He didn't understand why that particular cup of milk tea, which could be bought every day, had a different sense of ceremony. The minor disagreements that were not serious but accumulated more and more. The final result was a cold war. The more Song Xiao talked, the more excited she became, with a somewhat cold and indignant tone. Once upon a time, what was the truth and love in that so-called true love? When the novelty wears off, there will only be more and more contradictions. Moreover, not only did they meet more outstanding people, but there was also a real sacrifice on one side in their relationship. This invisible bomb only needs a fuse, so when Jiang Chuyan was pursued by a rich and handsome second generation, she became increasingly dissatisfied with Gufei. After all, the biggest halo on him back then was the first ranking, but in a bigger world. Grades were no longer the only criterion for measurement. Regarding the gradually fading relationship and Jiang Chuyan's subtle dislike, Gufei finally couldn't help but mention that he gave up the multiple-choice questions in the comprehensive science exam for her in the college entrance examination. But what he got was just a taunt from Jiang Chuyan. For me, Gufei, that was your own choice, wasn't it? Don't blame me for the result of your choice just because you're not satisfied. When it came to this, the relationship was completely torn apart. Soon, the two broke up, and Jiang Chuyan seamlessly connected with the rich second generation. So far, a love story with the labels of school beauty, top student, and giving up scores and full of legendary colors came to an end. I casually flipped through the magazine and lazily responded to Song Zhao's passionate speech. Oh, really? She was quiet for a few seconds and then suddenly sighed faintly. To be honest, as a friend who was in the same class as him for 6 years, I'm really disappointed and regretful for him. Even if he had taken the exam seriously and made a choice when filling out the college entrance examination application after the scores came out, did he really have to cut off all his retreats? I really want to know if he regrets his choice now. That love for which he could give up scores only lasted for 4 years after all. I smiled and calmly said, this was his own choice. Whether he regrets it or not, no one will bear the consequences for him anymore. 8. However, in the previous life, under his daily resentment and disgust, I really regretted it. At that time, because of our studies and work, we lived in the same city and were both in the academic circle. Inevitably, there were various intersections, whether deep or shallow. After going home, due to our parents, we maintained a superficial harmony and some dignity, but every time we met, I was almost always faced with his cold sarcasm. I thought about it. His hatred for me probably reached its peak when he discovered my secret crush. I have had the habit of keeping a diary since I was a child, because I spent the most time with Gufei. There were the most contents about him in the diary. It recorded that we went hiking together. He carried me home when I sprained my ankle. When I overslept and was late in the morning, he would stand in punishment with me. When I forgot to bring my book, he would hand me his book. We went to the library together on weekends, represented the school in various competitions together, comforted each other when our rankings dropped in exams, and also argued endlessly about the solution to a problem. Everything between Gufei and me was trivial and ordinary. There was no experience that would cause a large emotional fluctuation, so at first, I didn't realize that I had fallen in love with him. It was only until the day he pointed to the photos on the publicity board and asked me if I had confidence that I belatedly realized that between the lines on each page of the previous diaries, there was a revelation of my love for him. I liked his attitude of striving hard to achieve his ideals, liked the way his eyes shone when facing difficult problems, and also liked it when I was discouraged and had the idea of giving up. He would look at me with a serious gaze and ask me, "So, are you going to stop here, Wen Qian?" So that night, for the first time, I wrote in my diary, I like Gufei, but later, Jiang Chuyan appeared and got closer and closer to Gufei. After all, I didn't have much contact with her. The only connection between us was Gufei, so in the diary, I only mentioned her once and wrote one sentence, Gufei, he likes Jiang Chuyan. After that, Because of the love letter incident. The relationship between Gu Fei and me became more and more tense, every argument was consuming my love, just as the heartbeat that started without knowing when, the end also had no source. I originally thought that the secret crush on him would never be known. I didn't expect that he would see my diary when my dad called him to help install the newly bought bookshelf. To this day, I can still clearly remember the mocking look in his eyes when he held up the diary and looked at me. He asked me coldly, "You like me, right?" I looked at the diary in his hand, was silent for a moment, and then frankly admitted, "Yes, I used to." Probably my overly calm appearance was a bit irritating to him. He suddenly threw the diary at me forcefully and angrily questioned, "So you had to take that love letter?" The hard cover page scratched across my cheek, and it hurt a bit. At this moment, I suddenly realized that in fact, I no longer liked him. Facing the diary that was casually thrown down by him and contained my past heartbeats, I wasn't sad at all. I just picked up the diary that had fallen on the ground, wiped it, and seriously apologized to him. "I'm sorry, Gu Fei, I shouldn't have taken that love letter, I shouldn't have delayed your fate, and I shouldn't have liked you without permission." He still wasn't satisfied. He turned his head and snorted softly before turning around and leaving. Leaving behind those words that I remembered deeply, jealous and vicious. To be honest, although I liked him at that time, compared to that shallow love, what I cherished more was the friendship of walking side by side, so the purpose of taking the love letter was never to prevent him from being with Jian Chuyen. I just hoped that he could get a score that matched the efforts of the past 12 years without being affected. So I delayed the choice he faced for a few days. I never envied Jian Chuyen either. I always understood that feelings couldn't be forced, so if he and Jian Chuyen got together, I would send my blessings, and then continue to move forward on my own path. I wasn't inseparable from Gu Fei. Now, it can be considered that the wrong track in the previous life has been corrected back to the right direction, and I am on the path I should have originally taken. Although I didn't take that love letter again after being reborn, I didn't deliberately distance myself from Gu Fei in this life either. At least before the college entrance examination, everything was the same as in the previous life. However, after all, we lived in different circles for 4 years, so when we met at the party until the end, we didn't have a single conversation. This kind of drifting apart relationship actually had no impact on me. So I didn't take the initiative to seek him out to ease the situation. Until his mother was hospitalized due to illness, I was taken by my mother to visit her. After putting down the fruits we brought, I sat down in the ward filled with the smell of disinfectant and listened for a while to the chit-chat between my mother and Gu Fei's mother. Then I went outside to answer a phone call. When I went back, I met Gu Fei beside the flower bed. He was wearing a black coat, with an inescapable look of fatigue and boredom between his brows, and a half-lit cigarette between his fingertips. This familiar expression made me stunned for a moment. In the previous life, when he was blocked in his research project or when he tried hard to win back Jian Chuyen but failed, he had this kind of expression. At that time, although he was in the limelight, he still made unknown efforts behind the scenes. The academic path was ultimately difficult and lonely. As for winning back Jian Chuyen, after achieving certain achievements, Gu Fei actually went to look for her and indeed re-established contact with her. But at that time, almost all of Gu Fei's connections, resources, and social circles were in the city where his university was located, and he spent most of his time in the laboratory. So compared with those rich second generation who were also pursuing Jian Chuyen and had both money and leisure, his advantages were not great. In the end, after he courted her for half a year, Jian Chuyen still rejected him, making a perfect exit from his life. From then on, the bright moon hung high and was no longer attainable, and the charge of me taking the love letter to hinder their relationship also accompanied him for a lifetime. After all, in his opinion, if he and Jian Chuyen had been in the same school and stayed together back then, the ending would definitely have been different. Now, looking at him sitting here, I don't know why he has such an expression again. The moment our eyes met, he extinguished the cigarette between his fingers, then he stood up and walked towards me with a calm expression. His voice was hoarse after smoking, a bit dry. "I didn't have time to say hello last time we met. Wen Qian, you've changed a lot, you've become more beautiful and more outstanding." He paused, and then apologized to me with a somewhat guilty look. I was naive back then, because I was worried that she would misunderstand and afraid that our relationship would be affected. I classified our relationship as ordinary friends. I really wasn't mature enough. I quietly waited for him to finish, and then smiled at him calmly and responded generously, "It doesn't matter, Gufei. We were originally just ordinary friends, what else could we be?" His expression stiffened slightly and then dimmed. He looked towards the setting sun that was gradually disappearing in the sky, laughed self-deprecatingly, and said with a sense of loss, "Actually, later I thought countless times about what it would be like now if I hadn't seen that love letter back then." I followed his words and said in a somewhat indifferent tone, "That's impossible. The love letter was placed there, and it was impossible for you not to see it." He suddenly turned his head to look at me. "What if someone took it away?" I was stunned for a moment. Before I could speak, I heard him ask again, "Wen Qian, if you had seen it in advance, would you have taken it?" I looked carefully at his eyebrows and eyes, trying to find something, but there was nothing, so I calmly shook my head. "No, I wouldn't." We averted our eyes in silence. He suddenly smiled, as if he had finally let out a sigh of relief, and said several times as if he was glad, "That's good. That's good." Then he added, "After the breakup, I always had the same dream over and over again. I dreamed that in the year of the college entrance examination, you took the love letter in advance, and in the end, I didn't get to be with her, and I hated you for a lifetime. Finally, we died in a car accident that I caused." The warmth of the blood was so real, as if it had really happened. I made a sound and planned to return to the ward. I said to him gently, "It's all fake. Don't worry about it." 10. But I knew that it was real. The car accident happened on Jian Chuyan's wedding day. Before that, we were invited back to our high school alma mater to participate in an alumni association. Our former head teacher asked us to shoot a growth-themed video with the theme of Always on the Road for the younger students. Just like that, I got into Gufei's car and chose a shooting route. Later, according to the pre-prepared script, I sat in the passenger seat, adjusting the equipment while communicating with Gufei about the shooting angles. It was a long-awaited peaceful coexistence since the college entrance examination. The shooting was also very smooth. On the way back, I quietly leaned against the car window, no longer speaking, just looking at the scenery passing by outside the window. Then I heard Gufei's phone suddenly ring. He subconsciously pressed the hands-free button in the car. The next second, Jian Chuyan's delicate voice came out, "Gufei, today is my wedding. I forgot to send you an invitation. We've known each other for so many years and we're all friends. I'll send you the time and place on your phone later." With the sound of the phone hanging up, the car fell silent. I was considering saying that I would get out of the car and take a taxi back when he suddenly turned the car around. I knew that he still wanted to go, but unfortunately, he didn't make it, because the next second, we were hit by a truck. The feeling of the internal organs being displaced was really painful, but after the pain became numb, my feeling was actually relief. Before losing consciousness, I heard Gufei weakly call out Qian a few times first, and then that sentence that if he could do it all over again, he begged me not to ruin his fate with Jian Chuyan. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in the beginning of the first year of high school. I don't know what Gufei's "that's good" and the recurring dreams mean, but it doesn't matter anymore. The second time I met Gufei was on the day his mother was discharged from the hospital. I went to deliver the stewed soup on behalf of my mother. Then I chatted with her for a while and listened to her recall the past. She took out the old paper photos and picked up a group photo of Gufei and me after winning a junior high school competition. She said, "Time flies so fast. I remember that when your mother and I were waiting to give birth, we were in the same ward. You were born just one day later than Xiafei. In the blink of an eye, more than 20 years have passed. Qian, you're still as beautiful as when you were a child. Xiafei's father really liked you back then. He held you in his arms, and you neither cried nor made a fuss. You just knew how to smile quietly." Later, when you grew up a bit, you and Xiaofei were stuck together every day. We adults also said that you two would definitely be together when you grew up. I smiled appropriately and followed her words. "Auntie, those are all things from childhood. They can't be taken seriously." She patted my hand and sighed. "It's Xiaofei who doesn't have this fortune. Now the gap between you two is getting bigger and bigger. He really doesn't deserve you anymore." I smiled softly, originally intending to say that this kind of thought was wrong. "Auntie, there's no such thing as who deserves whom. What's important is whether two people are on the same path." She probably misunderstood my meaning and said to me, "I heard from Xiafei that he's preparing for the postgraduate entrance examination. The school is the target university he had in the college entrance examination. And it happens to be in the same city where you went to university, at that time. I gently interrupted her, Auntie, I'm going to study abroad. And I already have a boyfriend, I haven't had time to tell my parents yet. Just then, Gufei came back from outside and went to the kitchen to wash his hands. We were sitting on the sofa in the living room. I didn't know if he heard it, but he was standing there with his back to me, motionless for a long time. The air was quiet for a few seconds. Perhaps to ease the atmosphere, Gufei's mother asked about my boyfriend. I smiled and talked about how I met him. He was a boy who participated in the competition with me. He was gentle, clear-headed, humble, and self-disciplined. He was on a direct admission program from bachelor's to master's to doctorate degree. He won national awards every year and also won awards in various competitions he participated in. He could write calligraphy, play chess, and play the drum set. Then I turned on my phone and found a photo of him giving a speech at an academic forum. After showing it to her, I said, "He's the person I like very much and also my fellow traveler." The conversation ended here. Later, on the way back, I inexplicably thought of Gufei, who rolled up his sleeves in front of the sink. There were faint scars on his forearm. That was the tattoo that had been removed. Instantly, it was as if time had intersected. The name that had been crossed out with countless horizontal lines on the draft paper in the past was the signal for his relationship with Jiang Chuyan to start, now. The faint scar from the removed tattoo on his arm had become the symbol of their end. The sudden burst of hormones in that youth had finally ebbed like a tide. 11. The entanglement between Gufei and me has almost come to an end here. I was indeed looking forward to the fate he would face after choosing another path. I wanted to know how he would reach the height of his previous life in a situation where every upward channel is now full of countless competitors. I also wanted to know how the family that had spent countless efforts cultivating him for more than 10 years would support him to pursue his dreams again. I have to admit that I just hoped to see him not doing well on this path to prove that my actions in the previous life were correct. But I also know that I was indeed wrong. There is a sentence in Charles Dickens' The Mystery of Edwin Drood. The best kind of politeness is to mind one's own business. Once you interfere, you have to be responsible. So this time, I positioned myself correctly and didn't interfere in any of Gufei's choices without permission. In the previous life, he regretted not being with Jiang Chuyan. I don't know if he will regret those 21 multiple-choice questions he gave up in this life. However, the wonder of fate lies in the fact that there is never an optimal choice. No matter which one is chosen, there will be regrets. What's important is to bear the consequences of the choice, and now I have no interest in the direction of Gufei's fate in this life. After all, life is so long. Whether he makes a comeback and returns to the peak against the odds or stops here and becomes an ordinary person from now on, it has nothing to do with me anymore. I stopped looking back and continued to move forward. During the 3 years of studying abroad, I was in a long-distance relationship with my boyfriend. When Song Xiao called me, she smiled and teased me. "Chanqian, you're going to be away for 3 years. Aren't you afraid that your relationship with your boyfriend will fade?" While rushing to finish the deadline, I calmly replied, "Although my boyfriend and I are not in the same place, we are heading towards the same goal. Our souls will only get closer and closer." She made an ambiguous tisk sound, and then, as if thinking of something, changed the topic. "Do you remember Jiang Chuyan? A nouveau riche fell in love with her at first sight and crazily spent money pursuing her. Her wedding was so grand, she invited a large group of former classmates and received countless envious glances. Unfortunately, within less than 2 years, the nouveau riche became fickle and met a younger and more beautiful girl, so he spent money pursuing her as usual. After being cheated on, Jiang Chuyan made a big scene, but the result was that the nouveau riche wanted a divorce. She didn't agree, and now the two are still struggling over the divorce. I listened casually and suddenly found that Jiang Chuyan's face had gradually become blurred in my mind. Besides remembering that she was quite good-looking, I couldn't recall any other deep memories. Even when she was in love with Gufei back then, I didn't think there was anything special about her. I never regarded her as a competitor either. After all, we were people from 2 different worlds from beginning to end. Probably seeing that I was a bit indifferent, Song Xiao stopped talking about her and instead said, "Gufei took the postgraduate entrance examination twice and was brushed off by a difference of 0.1 points each time. What bad luck." Finally, after finishing the deadline, I let out a long sigh of relief and casually replied, "Oh, then I wish him good luck." Not long after that, one day, I suddenly received a withdrawn message. It was from Gu Fei, but I didn't ask. Until I returned to China, a former friend held a welcome back party for me. Gu Fei, who came along, asked me if I had seen that message. I shook my head and said that I was sleeping in the middle of the night. He smiled bitterly and explained, "I had a fragmented dream and mistook the dream for reality. I'm glad I didn't disturb you." After the college entrance examination results were announced, Gu Fei and Jiang Chuyan got together. The middle of the night when he had the dream was daytime on my side, but it no longer matters. Just like that withdrawn message when Qian, "Did you like me?" The answer no longer matters. What's important is that now I will walk further and further on my own path, and my lover is right ahead on the path, looking at his back as he turned and left after looking at me deeply, thin and lonely. My boyfriend came over holding a small cake and softly asked me who that was. I withdrew my gaze, took his arm, and smiled indifferently. Just an ordinary friend who has known me since childhood. Story 2. 3 days after I fled my arranged marriage, my fiancé committed suicide in the new house he had prepared for us, leaving all his wealth to me. While sorting through his belongings, I stumbled upon walls covered with photos of me and the floor stained with mottled blood spots. His assistant told me, "Sir had loved you for many years." His depression was severe. Only thoughts of you, only seeing you, could bring him some relief. Every detail was shocking and suffocating, yet inexplicably saddening. So, given another chance, facing the same arrangement to marry my childhood friend, I smiled and refused. "I'm not leaving. I wanted to see just how foolish the man who loved me dearly could be." Shinmu died on the 3rd day of my escape from the marriage. My father and brother, with faces full of regret, had just informed him about my fleeing when they stepped out of the estate and received the news of Shinmu's suicide by wrist cutting. His death was pronounced despite attempts at resuscitation. A will already in place left all his possessions to me. Receiving the call from my brother while I was far away in North America, my expression gradually stiffened. In my eyes, Shinmu was a jerk who suddenly showed up demanding marriage. A man I hardly knew, yet every detail seemed to suggest that he had been in love with me for many years. At the lawyer's request, I hurriedly returned to the country and stiffly received Shinmu's urn. He had no known relatives, and his assistant, looking solemnly at the square urn, softly told me, "Sir had loved you for many years. His depression was serious. Only by seeing you, by remembering you, could he feel a bit better. I thought, if you married him, he wouldn't be so pessimistic." But I never imagined. His voice trailed off, not blaming, but my heart inexplicably clenched. The assistant handed me a key. "This is the estate Sir prepared for you. It's also the new house he personally decorated, the place of his suicide." The estate was large, with a green lawn and even a racetrack, styled in my favorite royal blue. The furniture, the decorations, all catered to my tastes. Inside, one room was filled with my photos, from my sophomore year in college to the present, captured almost every moment by this man's camera. The floor bore the mottled blood stains left by his wrists, faintly giving off an odor of blood. Every detail was shocking and suffocating, yet inexplicably saddening. I couldn't help but feel angry again. He loved me. Why didn't he say so? Barging into my home like a robber, demanding a marriage alliance. How could I ever feel secure marrying him? Did he want his tragic end to make me feel guilty, to never forget him for the rest of my life? Dream on. I donated all the inheritance, including the villa. The photos on the wall were torn down by the cleaning lady, casually thrown on the floor, covering the blood stains. Shinmu's brief and legendary life thus completely vanished from this world. It took me 3 days to accept the reality of being given a second chance. 3 days ago, Shinmu had just come to my house, forcefully demanding a marriage alliance. Upon hearing this, my childhood friend did not hesitate to tell me to run. To escape to North America for a couple of days. In my past life, that's exactly what I did, but in this life, remembering those walls filled with photos, I gazed at the bloodstains marring the ground and calmly shook my head. "I don't want to leave," I said. "I need to find him and ask why he wants to marry me." Shinmu's business was thriving. When I went to see him, he was still in a meeting. His assistant personally came down to greet me and asked me to wait a moment in the office. "The boss will be down soon," I softly acknowledged with a hum. True to their word, Shinmu arrived quickly. Before I had even finished a cup of tea, he hurried over, fastening his undone cufflinks as he walked. When he saw me, he stopped in his tracks and calmly called out, "Miss Gu." His expression was cold and distant, as if he was looking at a stranger. His indifference left me speechless. After a moment, I asked softly, "Mr. Shen, my father said you want to marry me, why is that? To marry if I wish, no reason needed. I was at a loss for words. How was I supposed to respond to that? Slowly, I stood up and picked up my bag. Then I guess I'll be leaving now. Shenmu's expression flickered, showing a rare hint of surprise. You're leaving just like that? I looked at him expressionlessly, watching his face turn pale, a layer of self-defeat cloaking him, yet, he stepped aside to let me pass. If I wasn't sure that he had feelings for me, I would have thought he was toying with me. I sighed and took the initiative to grab his sleeve. How about we have dinner together? The interactions between Shenmu and me were so intense that even his assistant was on edge. As I was leaving, the assistant kept apologizing. Boss is not good at chatting with girls. Miss Gu, please don't be mad at him. I'm not mad. I smiled and told him, I actually quite like him. His looks are really my type. The office door was ajar. Through the small gap, I clearly saw Shenmu touch his face. Looking stunned, I smiled slightly and said to the assistant, I've asked your boss to have dinner with me tonight. Remind him not to stand me up. The assistant nodded hurriedly, as if I might change my mind any second. I walked out of the company's main entrance in my high heels. Just then, my childhood friend called. Seeing the contact named Brother Liangsheng, I calmly hung up, my thoughts drifting as I gazed at the clouds. Liangsheng has always treated me well and truly cared for me. But whether it's a childhood friend or just a friend, eventually, they all fade into the journey of life. Just like in a past life, he had a lover and children, learned to avoid me. So even when I was trapped in the mountains with a survey team and called him, his wife mocked me, calling me an old maid who couldn't get married. When his wife was insulting me, Liangsheng was right there, silent. I died there, never knowing what he really felt. That evening, Shenmu arrived early for dinner, but the atmosphere was chilly. I struggled to make conversation, but he was like a conversation-ending machine, showing no interest in anything. I was exhausted and placed my cutlery heavily on the table. Mr. Shen, this way, it feels like you don't really want to start a family with me. Shenmu's Adam's apple bobbed as he looked down and apologized. I'm sorry, I started, hoping he would finally open up. I don't want to hear this, I said, feeling somewhat helpless. You have managed the company for so many years, undefeated at the negotiation table, with a flawless insight into human nature, and yet now it seems. It makes me feel like you're not really interested in me. Shenmu's face turned pale, his fingertips tightly pinching into the palm of his hand, faintly showing traces of blood. Don't overthink it, he said, I'm just not used to being this close to you. His sudden, confession-like statement took me by surprise. His nervousness and loneliness, as well as the blood marks from his palm, didn't seem feigned. I suddenly remembered what his assistant said in my past life. Sir's depression is quite severe. He only feels a bit better when he sees you, Mr. Shen. I became very curious and asked him directly, did we know each other before? Shenmu's lips trembled slightly, his eyes instinctively dodged mine, and he turned his head towards the transparent glass windows of the restaurant. We did, when, I pressed further, but Shenmu clamped his mouth shut, refusing to say more. I felt a bit disheartened and began eating my steak. No longer trying to make conversation, Shenmu remained silent, seemingly oblivious to the awkward atmosphere. He just stared blankly at my lips and neck, his gaze following the red wine I swallowed, slowly moving down to my throat, then stopped, restrained by his upbringing. I glared at him. He turned his head in panic, his face a bit pale, his lips accidentally bitten and showing fresh red blood. I was exasperated. If you want to look, just look openly, don't be sneaky. We're about to get married soon, Mr. Shen, can't you do something more aboveboard? I had said, annoyed. He had taken so many photos of me, hired so many people to watch me, and even bribed my nanny. If it weren't for his tragic death in my past life, I would have already reported him for being a creep, but his assistant also said that Shenmu was ill. I should be more patient with a sick person. I took the initiative to grasp his hand, ignoring his momentarily stiff expression, and gently wiped the blood from his palm with a damp tissue. Such beautiful hands, don't harm them anymore, okay? Shenmu didn't respond, just stared at my eyes for a long while, then asked quietly, are you willing to marry me now? Did you give me an option not to? His Adam's apple bobbed. Actually, if you don't want to, you could run away from the wedding, or find you and scold you, saying I would never marry you. I stared into his eyes. I have no problem doing that, but Shenmu, what would happen to you? The outcome was clear, he would die. in my past life, I never understood how someone could be so weak and incapable, to fear even a meeting, and to end his life so casually just from the news of a runaway bride, but still, I couldn't bear the thought of his death. Shinmu was undoubtedly a genius, with a sharp vision, yet his background remained a mystery, despite all the digging. No one could uncover his origins. Leaving everyone to only watch as he seized the internet boom and rose rapidly, amidst the light-hearted laughter, he left the old families of Jiang City gasping for air. But such a person, in the prime of his life, he committed suicide over a woman. In his past life, Shinmu became the laughingstock of the public, crowned as the top love-brained person, due to deliberate hype by others. He was subjected to very harsh criticism. I don't want all this to happen again. On the way home, I thought a lot with my mind blank. Eventually, looking at Shinmu who was driving emotionlessly beside me, I decided to talk to his assistant in a couple of days. I really don't know how to get along with this guy. And then, his illness. Is there really no solution? The black Rolls-Royce stopped in front of my villa, and coincidentally, I met Liangxing coming over with pastries. Shinmu squinted his eyes. Should I go down and say hello? I turned my head and asked him. Liangxing is a very good friend of mine. No need. Shinmu leaned over and unbuckled my seat belt. You go home. Though I said no need, my heart suddenly turned cold and bitter, as if I had swallowed a bitter herb. I grabbed his wrist. He and I are really just friends. Don't overthink it. I won't, really. I turned my head and saw him gripping the steering wheel tightly, his veins faintly showing. I touched his fingertips. Can you tell me if there's anything bothering you? Don't keep it to yourself. It makes things difficult. Pressed by me, Shinmu's Adam's apple bobbed, and he turned his head away, speaking slowly. I don't really like him. Then you don't have to interact with him. I patted his head encouragingly. He's just my friend. You don't have to force yourself to like him, and in the future, as husband and wife, we'll have a relationship many times closer than with him. If you mind my relationship with him, I'll also pay attention in the future and keep some distance from him. Shinmu seemed surprised. You would distance yourself from him for me. Why not? I looked at Shinmu with a smile and said softly, we are husband and wife. After all. Shinmu was stunned, seemingly dazed. I seized the moment and moved closer to him, telling him, you see, things can be resolved only when spoken about. Right, if you have any dissatisfaction with me, anything you want to say, you must tell me. Don't keep it to yourself and get half dead with anger. And I don't even know, it would be a pity. I could roughly sense that Shinmu didn't know how to handle intimate relationships. He applied the tactics of business negotiation to relationships, coerced my family into a marriage alliance, and when I approached him proactively, he was at a loss and didn't know how to respond. It's a bit scary how naive he is in relationships. It's okay, I thought, I can teach him slowly. Liangxing watched me get out of Shinmu's car, his eyes narrowing slightly, his expression slightly unfriendly. As the car drove away, Liangxing also approached me. You've decided to marry him. He's handsome, wealthy, reputable in our circle, and scandal-free. Why not marry him? But, he stopped mid-sentence, a bit panicked, a bit messy, with a touch of anger and impatience. He finally blurted out dryly, are you sure you like him? In this circle, how many marriages are out of love? I shrugged. He's suitable. Liangxing's eyes widened. He can't even compare to the two of us. Liangxing. I cut him off coldly. I'm getting married. Some things shouldn't be said anymore. I walked home without waiting for him to respond. To be honest, even after living through it all again, I still couldn't figure out Liangxing's attitude towards me. At his best, he was incredibly kind, even going so far as to travel across small towns in northern Europe just to buy me a necklace. At his worst, he couldn't even remember my birthday. In my previous life, I had suggested an arranged marriage to him, which he declined, saying he wanted to enjoy a few more years of freedom. Then, while making a snowman in St. Petersburg, he fell head over heels for a simple and sweet girl, and they got married and had a child within 3 months. His wife was quite bothered by my presence, and knowing this, I kept my distance and didn't contact him. In the end, it turned out to be a permanent goodbye. Liangxing would probably be a bit sad to hear of my passing. After all, when his father and stepmother were upset with his brother for slapping him, I was the one who sat with him on the rooftop, counting stars all night. The next day, when I went to see Shinmu, he was still in a meeting. Through the transparent glass, I could see his serious expression, and the suit he wore seemed to add an edge to his demeanor. I waited in the lounge and chatted casually with his assistant. The assistant was very discreet and kept beating around the bush about his condition. pretending not to know what I was talking about, which left me feeling helpless. Don't you think it would be best for him if you were clear with me about his condition? I asked. But Mr. Shin doesn't want you to know, he replied. He wants to remain perfect in your eyes, he added meaningfully, hinting that Mr. Shin really hoped I could rely on him. What are you talking about? Shinmu entered the lounge after his meeting, looking a bit tired as he adjusted his tie. We were discussing how good-looking you are, and whether you've had plastic surgery. I leaned back on the sofa, smiling at him, but your assistant said no, which is a shame. I could never match up to Mr. Shin's features, I teased. Shinmu was momentarily stunned. The assistant, knowing when to leave, had already exited and closed the door, leaving the room very quiet. I could hear the rustle of Shinmu's suit as he spoke in a hoarse voice. Do you like this look? Is it that surprising? I raised an eyebrow. Could it be that Mr. Shin isn't aware of his own charm? His ears reddened slightly as he awkwardly turned away, not looking at me. Speaking of which, calling you Mr. Shin feels a bit too formal now. I walked up to him and touched his head, feeling the stiffness from the hairspray, which wasn't very pleasant. I bent down close to his ear. Can I call you Big Brother instead? Shinmu pushed me away abruptly. He suddenly became angry, and I couldn't understand why. Just as I couldn't understand why he liked me, he sat behind his desk, his back to me, his voice filled with resentment. You should leave. But I wanted to have lunch with you. No need, Shinmu refused without hesitation. I have things to do at noon. What was he up to? I studied him for a moment and slowly said, well, all right then, just be mindful of the time. You shouldn't skip meals. I picked up my bag and walked out, pausing for a moment at the door. Under the assistant's anxious gaze, I heard the sounds of something being smashed and Shinmu's anguished growls. I had intentionally left the door slightly ajar. His pained, desperate growls mingled with the sound of breaking glass wafted through the door. I tapped on the desk of the assistant in front of me, my expression grave. Are you still planning to keep things from me? He hesitated, but I ignored him and pushed the door open. Walking in, Shinmu was in a particularly disheveled state, curled up in a corner, sitting amidst shattered glass. His fingertips were covered in blood, though it was unclear whether it was from digging at his skin or from the glass cuts. I stepped over the broken glass. My high heels crunched harshly on the jagged fragments, creating a grating noise. Shinmu, panic-stricken, kept his head down, trembling, refusing to look at me. I touched his shoulder, asking, what's wrong? He was too big and heavy, over 6 feet tall, and I couldn't embrace him fully. I could only squat beside him, carefully picking glass splinters from his palm with tweezers. Finally, Shinmu lifted his head, staring at me. After a long moment, he rasped, ugly, isn't it? What? Your hand? I paused, staring at his long, slender fingers that were barely covered with flesh, and couldn't help but mutter about his lack of self-awareness. They look fine, I sighed, bent down to his fingertips, and gently kissed them. They really do look fine. Yet Shinmu was still not pleased. He asked me, did you say the same to your exes before? What? Pleasing me, treating me well, calling me brother. Did all your exes get this treatment? I fell into an awkward silence. So he had been upset over this. I thought it might have been something about his family, maybe something triggered by being called brother. Turns out it was just romantic frustrations. Such a strong and formidable person, yet so tormented by emotions. I patted his head and sighed softly. Fool, I've had quite a few relationships. After all, I'm good-looking and come from a decent family, attracting many suitors, and inevitably, a few have touched my heart. But in families like ours, dating and marriage are not the same. My dad told me early on that I could date whoever I wanted, but when it came time, I had to come back and marry properly. I helped him to stand and sit on the sofa, then let the cleaning staff come in to tidy up the floor, and poured him a warm cup of water. Bustling about, Shinmu held my hand. You don't need to do all this, I sat down, following his lead, deep in thought. He probably had already checked how many boyfriends I had before. I used to be playful, and I've done plenty of foolish things. If he minds, there's nothing I can do about it. You can't contact them anymore. Shinmu's abrupt statement interrupted my thoughts. I turned to look at him, seeing his serious face, and scratched his wrist. Are you ordering me? His body tensed suddenly, his breathing became shallow, as if realizing something. He nervously turned his head. If you want to contact them, at least tell me in advance, otherwise I understand. I cut him off. I won't contact them anymore. Then I asked him, Were you really that upset just now because of this? Is it because of my ex? Shenmue didn't respond. I felt a bit helpless. If there's something bothering you, can you please tell me? Acting like this is really exhausting for me, not saying anything, getting inexplicably angry, throwing things around. I don't even know how to appease you. So, all your exes did a better job than me, is that it? Shenmue suddenly interrupted me, his eyes bloodshot and his tone as petulant as a child's. How did things get to this point? I just wanted to have a good talk with him. I straightened up, feeling helpless, and asked him, if these things bother you, there's nothing I can do. I don't think having a few relationships is a crime. The past is the past. Why can't you let it go, Mr. Shin? Does digging into these matters and questioning me about them really make you happy? Fine, let me tell you, yes, I've been in relationships, and I genuinely liked them at the time. Does that make you happy to hear? Shinmu's eyes grew redder, and he looked like he was about to cry, seeing me stand up. He anxiously tried to grab my sleeve, but I gently brushed him off. His voice sounded lost. I thought that if I just cooperated with you, we could get along well, but now I realize, I just can't adapt to your way of thinking. I looked into his reddened eyes and slowed my tone. You don't seem happy with me either, and you've even hurt yourself. Shenmue, maybe we should call off the engagement. No, Shenmue firmly held my gaze, his eyes bloodshot as he tightly gripped my arm, repeating over and over, no calling it off. Our faces were so close I could see the fine hairs on his cheeks, and with his pitiful tone, it really felt like I was bullying a child. I absent-mindedly ruffled his hair and asked him once more, so tell me, why do you want to marry me? Shenmue's eyes flickered, he turned his head away subconsciously, but I caught his chin. Tell me, Shenmue, tell me. I stared intently at him. I don't want to be a fool who knows nothing. His eyelashes trembled, his voice hesitant. I want to marry you. Why do you want to marry me? Tears welled up in his eyes as he blinked at me, seemingly pleading and at a loss for words. I spoke for him. You like me, don't you, fool? What's so hard to say about that? I rubbed his cheek, trying to stand up, but he pulled me down onto the couch. The gentle facade was broken as he wrapped his arms around my shoulders, sobbing softly. I'm disgusting like this, aren't I? A disgusting person like me liking you. That's annoying, right? I watched him in disbelief. What was he thinking? Disgusting? Does he hate it? Doesn't he know that he tops the list on the internet as the most desirable man to marry? How can someone like him feel so insecure? I feel like I'm beginning to see something. I hold his face, forcing him to look up and wipe the tears from the corners of his eyes. When my friends found out I could marry you, they were all envious, saying I must have accumulated luck from 8 past lives to marry you. How come it seems like a disgrace when it comes to you? He buried his head in my neck and shoulder without saying a word, but at least he stopped crying. I patted his back and sighed softly. Brother, can you please have a little more confidence in yourself? You own a 32-story building. Everyone outside respectfully calls you boss when they see you, and you're so handsome. Isn't it normal that I would fall for you? Shenmue shuddered slightly, hardly believing as he asked in a low voice. You like me, what else? Do you think a girl who comes to see you every day has nothing better to do? I patted his back, telling him gently, brother, a girl doesn't waste time on someone she's not interested in. You need to have some confidence too. You're really great, and we'll be great together. Believe me. Shenmue began to cry again, his tears soaked my collar, warm and slightly tingling. You can't lie to me. I won't lie to you. My heart went soft, gently touching his earlobe. Feeling the damp heat at my neck, and my heart pounding. He's unlike anyone I've dated before. It's intriguing, I thought. Shenmue is incredibly fragile inside. A single word, a gesture, an attitude from me could easily make him crumble. This shouldn't be the case for a CEO of a public company, yet, the reality is bizarre and absurd. He awkwardly stood up, his cheeks flushing furiously, yet habitually keeping a cold expression. Looking at me, he asked softly, are you hungry? A little. I stood up, straightened my rumpled clothes, pulling them down to cover my exposed waist. Shenmue turned his head away, his face as red as a ripe apple, making my heart flutter. Is he that innocent? This guy is nearly 30, surely he's not still. I suppressed my speculation and lazily made a request. Have your assistant bring something up. I don't feel like going out. Okay. Shenmue went out to instruct his assistant while I watched his tall figure from behind the light, gesturing at his long legs. Realizing more and more how perfectly proportioned he was, handsome, well-built, wealthy, and not promiscuous. If it weren't for his mental issues, he probably wouldn't have ended up with me. I sighed. A significant reason for Shinmu's poor mental state is his insomnia. His assistant, extremely embarrassed, told me that Shinmu has been sleeping with my photo many nights. I didn't ask where he got the photo. The assistant breathed a sigh of relief, returning to Shinmu's side. I watched him work for a while. His ears turned red, and he seemed unable to concentrate. He put down the document in his hand. Is it that interesting to look at me? I nodded subconsciously. Then after a moment, I remembered the real purpose of my visit. Can I visit your house? The new one you've been preparing? Shinmu was taken aback. Why do you suddenly want to go there? I just want to see it. Considering I'll be living there in the future, he never refused me. Simply nodding in response, he added, let me know if there's anything you're not satisfied with. Once again, I stepped into that elegant and noble manner, my eyes involuntarily moistening. The place was brightly lit, with the sun casting oblique rays that warmly embraced me. It was comfortable, not like in my previous life, where it was so cold it made me want to escape. I stealthily glanced at the locked room on the top floor to the right. I knew it contained my photos and his replicated oil paintings, clearly my face, with a black mole near the eye. I followed Shinmu into the bedroom in silence. The room was adorned with bright red sheets and quilts, embellished with a large happiness character. Standing by the bed, I felt a mix of laughter and tears. Finally, I tugged at Shinmu's sleeve and asked him, do you really want to marry me that much? His Adam's apple bobbed. Is there anything you're dissatisfied with? No. Everything is perfect. I pulled him to sit on the bed. When did you start preparing all this? Just these past few days. He skillfully extended his fingers for me to play with, helplessly obedient. Due to my protests, he had stopped using hair gel. His bangs softly lay on his forehead, less harsh, and more gentle. In the room next door, the place where he took his own life in his last life, blood had splattered everywhere, but now, he held me, his chin resting on my head, his expression tender and content, like a well-fed beast lazily basking in the sun on a lawn. Had I managed to change his fate? The wedding was drawing near. I visited him daily, staying late into the night, which earned me several scoldings from my father for being unreserved. Yet, Shinmu seemed quite pleased. He was eating more, gaining some weight, his previously gaunt fingers now a bit fleshier. One day, as I was about to visit him, I saw Liangxing waiting at the company building. He grabbed me as soon as he saw me. He has bewitched you. I'll take you away. Let's go to North America. Are you insane? I shook him off in disbelief. Think whatever you want, but I can't let you sink any deeper. Liangxing clenched his teeth. You don't love him, Wanwan. It's just novelty to you. You can't just throw your life away, whether I like him or not. What does it have to do with you? I found it strange. Don't you think you're being too nosy? Liangxing, with eyes red with bloodshot, suddenly looked sorrowful. His voice turned soft, almost pleading. What about an arranged marriage between us? Wanwan, you can't just abandon me like this. He looked as disheveled as if he had been beaten. His suit crumpled against his body, begging pitifully for my mercy. I remembered what my best friend had told me when Liangxing got married in my previous life. If only you had married first, he would have definitely gone crazy. How could simple, cute love at first sight compare to the bond you and he had before? He's only been so recklessly affectionate because you haven't been interested in other men these years. And he's your only friend of the opposite sex, Liangxing. I called his name with a complex expression, raising my hand to pat the dust off his shoulder. Let's go back. Let's pretend I didn't hear what you said today. I'm getting married soon. From now on, you should be more careful too, to avoid misunderstandings. He looked at me anxiously, tears falling. In a low murmur, he said, did I just miss the chance? With no way to turn back. We are friends. I used the words he once replied to me. To answer him, if you wish, we can be friends for a lifetime. When I pushed the door open, Shinmu was sitting on the sofa, a gloomy aura enveloping him. Why are you so late today? I ran into a friend downstairs and chatted for a while. I placed the snacks I brought on the table and turned to see him still looking sullen, which was strange. What's wrong? Shinmu looked up at me, his voice tinged with a hint of grievance. How was your chat with Liangxing? How did you know? I was about to ask how he knew. But then I remembered the people he had around me and decided it wasn't necessary. I told him the truth. He came to find me, said he wanted to take me away. A shadow passed over Shinmu's eyes. I patted his shoulder, leaning against him lazily and said, but I refused him. I told him I wanted to stay with you. Shinmu slowly responded with an oh. Aren't you going to praise me? He turned his head. What's there to praise? I just declared my loyalty to you in front of another man, I said. Pretending to be annoyed, how can you not show any appreciation? Shinmu swallowed hard, looking at me bewildered. After a moment, he stood up and took a box from the drawer, opening it. It was a huge blue crystal necklace. It looked familiar. Is that the one from the auction in Hong Kong? Yes, I laughed out loud. The necklace was beautiful and valuable, but Shinmu had spent 3 billion on it. The headlines that night were all about the fool who spent 3 billion on a necklace. Why did you buy it? You like blue, he said quietly. I think it suits you. Thank you, brother. I hugged his neck and rubbed my cheek against his. The auction was 2 months ago. Why bring it out today? You seemed unhappy today, he said softly. I was planning to give it to you for your birthday, but I thought it could cheer you up now. When have I ever not? I remembered my feigned anger from earlier and shut my mouth, amused. This man really can't tell the difference between a girl being genuinely upset and just pretending. I poked his cheek. I'm not upset, really, but I'm still very happy now. Brother, I'm really starting to like you more and more. Shinmu's cheeks reddened as he lifted me onto his lap and carefully kissed my forehead. He's not someone who understands girls well, yet his assistant keeps reminding me, urging me not to agitate him. I couldn't help but ask, has his condition worsened these days? No. The assistant hesitated, then said, actually, Sir's mood has improved significantly. He no longer needs sleeping pills at night, so why do you keep pestering me? Sir has been better because you've been around. If you grow tired and leave, the consequences could be severe. He pleaded with me. I don't know what your intentions are for getting close to Sir, but please, don't just walk away casually. He might really lose his mind, and might even die. I added that last part in my mind. I patted his shoulder. Don't worry. I care about him more than you do. I'm no savior, nor am I a professional psychologist. All I can do is my utmost to ease Shinmu's suffering. I just want him to be a little happier. When the mood is good, everything else should follow. When Shinmu's father approached me, I was somewhat surprised. After all, this was the first time I heard about his family. His father, who came from the capital, wore a similar suit and bore a resemblance to him, yet had a completely different demeanor. His sinister presence was downright terrifying. He was blunt right from the start. Miss Gu, I want you to leave my son. I was a bit stunned and took a sip of tea to calm down before asking, so how much are you willing to pay? 2 billion, enough to get your family through this crisis. I paused. I wasn't even aware that my family was in crisis. I studied him quietly for a moment before firmly stating, ours is true love. You'll need to offer more. The necklace Shinmu bought for me alone cost 3 billion, your offer isn't tempting enough, he scoffed. Do you think staying by his side is something good? He looked at me mockingly. Have you been in touch with your ex-boyfriends? Why don't you find out how many of them are still alive? And that Liangsheng, do you think Shinmu will let him off? And your brother, do you think being blood-related to you will save him? Let me tell you, Shinmu won't spare him either. Your love is so grand, yet it's everyone around you who suffers. You're kept in the dark like a fool. Isn't that ridiculous? My brows furrowed, disgust filling my eyes. I believe in Shinmu. He's not that kind of person, whether he is or not. Why don't you find out for yourself? He smiled confidently. They say the son is like the father. The tricks I used on his mother, he will surely use them on you exactly as I did. Believe it or not, then your wife must not be with you anymore. No, on the contrary, we are very happy together now. He smiled proudly. She can't escape, has resigned to her fate, and still has living family members she can't bear to leave behind. She's very obedient now, very docile, waiting at home every day, soft, gentle. All her claws and teeth cut out, tamed to only rely on me, obedient like a bird in a cage. I suddenly woke up. It was just a dream. The north wind howled against the window glass, snapping me out of my daze. As I realized my back was covered in cold sweat. In my entire life, I've never met anyone as detestable as Shinmu's father. Just thinking about his smug domestication theory makes me want to vomit. It's still afternoon, and I'd just woken up from a 3-hour nap. When I turned on my phone, I was greeted with 16 missed calls from Shinmu. I called him back, and before I could even speak, I was interrupted by his anxious voice. Why didn't you answer my calls? Did you see him? What did he say to you? Do you not want me anymore? Are you thinking of leaving, calling off our engagement or breaking up with me? Stop guessing, I said, cutting him off. I didn't do any of that. I just fell asleep. Don't overthink it. Shinmu went silent, his breathing heavy. After a moment, he said in a pitiful voice, "Wan, I'm scared." His voice was so sorrowful and pitiful that it overflowed my heart with sympathy. "Don't be afraid," I sighed. "Although he's your father, to me, he's just a stranger. I still trust you more. Do you understand?" Shinmu didn't respond, he just said softly, "Wan, I want to see you." Shinmu came to pick me up at my house. As soon as I got into the car, he pulled me onto his lap and hugged me tightly, burying his head in my neck and pleading with a cry in his voice. "Don't believe a word he says." I replied, patting his back. "I only believe in you." Shinmu looked up, tears clinging to his eyelashes. Under my guidance, he has now become quite adept at expressing his emotions in front of me, whether he's feeling wronged, sad, or anything else. He knows to share it with me instead of bottling it up inside, like now. He murmured, "Can you not meet with him again? I was really scared today. When you didn't answer my calls, I felt like I was going to die." "Don't say that word," I covered his mouth. "You're going to live a long life." Interrupted, Shinmu looked momentarily dazed. I ruffled his hair and smiled slightly. "If you don't want me to meet him, I won't. After all, I only met him because of you. Brother, you need to have more confidence in yourself." I grasped his hand. "I don't believe anything others say about you. I only believe what I see, what I hear, and what you tell me. You really are an excellent person, brother. You're amazing and you need to believe in yourself, understand?" Shinmu is very insecure. I don't know what he went through in the past that made him so timid and fragile, especially in romantic relationships, where he flutters about like a headless fly, feeling unworthy of anyone's love. These days, whenever I get the chance, I compliment him, from his looks to his knowledge, from his wealth to his status. Even saying his fingernails are particularly cute. Only with enough confidence can he stop being like a startled bird, anxious and unsettled all day. I hope that Shinmu can find relaxation and joy in our intimate relationship, not constantly tense, worrying about how to please me, which must be exhausting. "Brother, I'm already an adult now," I said, hinting at my capability to handle complex emotions and relationships. "Having your own judgment means not changing your opinion of me just because of a careless remark from someone else." I leaned in and hugged Shinmu's shoulders. "I like you, and I can speak for myself. Whatever the issue, I'll ask you directly. I definitely won't leave, and you're so outstanding. I don't want to let you go and give someone else the advantage." Shinmu's eyes sparkled like diamonds, radiant and bright. Since I first met him, the aloofness that once cloaked him had diminished, replaced by a warmer, more humane touch. He no longer resembled the withered wood that seemed ready to perish at any moment. My presence had finally made a real impact on him. I could roughly guess that Shinmu's family background caused him a lot of pain, but when he hugged me and softly said he disliked his name, I was still a bit shocked. He hates that I came between him and my mother, and he named me hoping I would die soon. Like the sunset in the west, from his birth. His father had wished him dead. How could someone be like that? My heart felt bitter as I held his hand. "But your mother loves you." "She doesn't love me," Shinmu said with a bitter smile. "She's just trapped by me. She's different from you. She's a very traditional woman. Even though she's well educated, she stubbornly believes a woman's place is to support her husband and educate her children. After I was born, all her rebellions became empty. She couldn't leave me because of her sense of responsibility, but on her own, she couldn't provide a comfortable life for me, so she resigned herself to her fate." His voice was frantic as he spoke, his eyes reddening, moist as if veiled by a layer of mist. It was heart-wrenching to see. "But none of this is your fault. You shouldn't have to bear the consequences of your father's actions," I told him earnestly, feeling the warmth of his chest. "Brother, you're amazing, truly outstanding. Your mother would definitely be proud of who you are now." Shinmu gave a wry smile. He patted my head. "Only you always see the best in me. So, Wan, you're all I have." He held me tightly, his chin resting on top of my head, pleading earnestly, "You must never leave me. I'd go mad without you." Opening my email to see a barrage of spam, I momentarily wanted to meet the person responsible. How much hatred must one harbor to not bear seeing their son happy, determined to ruin it? I took a deep breath. The emails were mostly threats or included photos of my exes, mentioning how miserable their lives were, earnestly advising me to stay away from him. I didn't even look at them, just deleted all the emails right away. Lately, I've been busy preparing for the wedding, frazzled by the guest list from my family. As a result, I've had less contact with Shinmu. So when I received a frantic call from my assistant in the evening about his suicide attempt, I was caught off guard. For a moment, I felt as if I had plunged into an icy cave. Just before his suicide attempt, Shinmu had met with his father. I don't know what was said, but it triggered his fragile nerves. Right after his father left, Shinmu slit his wrists. Fortunately, he was found in time, outside the emergency room. I hugged my shawl, squatting against the wall on the floor, my teeth chattering uncontrollably. How could there be such a father? He must have known Shinmu was psychologically fragile, yet he pushed him mercilessly to the brink. When Shinmu was wheeled out, he was hooked up to N4, his face deathly pale. The little color he had regained these past days was completely wiped out, sitting on a chair beside his bed. I stared blankly at him for a long time until he woke up. As soon as he opened his eyes and saw me, his voice hoarse and rough, he called my name, Wanwan. I ignored him and got up to call the doctor. After the doctor took away the 4 bag, I stood by the bed, silently staring at his pale face, scaring him. He anxiously said, "If you're upset, just scold me, or even hit me, but don't ignore me like this, Wanwan." He seemed really afraid of this cold violence. Every time I gave him the silent treatment, he'd panic like a child who hadn't grown up. Clutching at my sleeve, begging for forgiveness, but this time, I didn't plan to indulge him. I ignored him all day, watching him lost and despondent, sinking into confusion and self-loathing. The scars on his wrists were gruesome, reopened and bleeding again, prompting even the doctor to advise me, "Consider the patient's feelings first." "I know," I said softly, "don't worry." Back in the hospital room, Shinmu sat blankly, his gaze empty as he stared out the window. He was too fragile and disheartened, like a body without a soul. "Shinmu." I stood 3 meters away and called out to him softly, my tone emotionless. He seemed to realize something, closed his eyes in pain, and refused to respond. I didn't care about his evasion and told him directly, "Let's call off the engagement." The vase on the bedside table shattered, his expression twisted momentarily, then quickly fell into decay and utter despair. He rasped my name, Wanwan. Trying to crawl out of bed to reach me, his wrist wounds tore open again, blood gushing. I stepped forward to press down on his wrist, gently touched his disheveled hair. "What do you want to do now? Lock me up like your father would, trained to obey only you, or would you rather hurt yourself than lay a finger on me?" Wanwan. Shinmu looked up at me, his eyes wide with panic. I answered for him, "You would choose the latter, wouldn't you?" I leaned down and kissed his lips. A kiss devoid of desire, and as I pulled away, I pinched his cheek. "Brother, you're not like your father, and I'm not your mother. We won't end up like them, brother." "Shinmu, my dear, my love, what exactly are you afraid of?" I felt like I could glimpse a bit into his father's psyche. He knew, even if Shinmu's mother had resigned herself, she had obediently followed him all her life, yet she was far from happy. Their marriage was not as blissful as he had imagined. That's why he couldn't stand to see Shinmu's happiness. The ease with which Shinmu found the love he wanted made him feel like a failure, and even drove him to rage. He kept emphasizing to me that Shinmu was his son and would surely end up doing the same despicable things as him. He constantly tried to brainwash Shinmu. I checked the surveillance footage. The last thing he said to Shinmu before he left was, "Son, just you wait and see. As long as you're alive, one day you'll find yourself treating her just like I treated your mother. By then, your mother's present will become her future." At that, I couldn't help but laugh sarcastically. So, he knew how miserable his wife, Shinmu's mother, was, a misery so profound that threatening another girl with the same fate was considered a powerful deterrent. Shinmu didn't want me to end up like his mother. He didn't want to hurt me and despised the dirty genes within him. In a moment of desperation, he chose to end his own life without hesitation. "Do you feel how different you are from him?" I asked earnestly, kneeling by the bed and looking into Shinmu's eyes. "When he learned of your mother's departure, he resorted to coercion, threats, and even imprisonment, doing all sorts of disgraceful things, but you only hurt yourself." I took his uninjured right hand and intertwined our fingers. "Brother, do you think this version of you could ever hurt me?" Shinmu's Adam's apple bobbed. His eyes reddened and filled with sorrow as he looked at me. "But I'm afraid, Wanwan, you're so good, so proud. I fear you might end up like my mother." "We won't," I reassured him again. "Brother, we will be happy in the future." Human nature is no more than that of a fierce bird, harboring the most primitive and ugly desires, but what matters is the ability to suppress and control them. You think you might one day hurt me, but you've controlled that thought, preferring to end your life rather than lay a finger on me. Brother, believe in yourself. Humanity has evolved over so many years. We are no longer the beasts in the forest living off raw meat. I looked into his eyes, and please believe in me, will you? I am not your mother. I don't hold on to outdated virtues. I choose to stay by your side only because I love you, very much so, brother, I repeated, earnestly telling him again, please believe me. I've been through many relationships and have become indifferent to romance. I also despise those arrogant, misogynistic men. If I hadn't met you, I probably wouldn't consider dating again, just like in my past life, lonely, dying alone on an adventure, having experienced too much in my youth. I found everything bland, until I met Shinmu. He truly respected me and was so obedient, acting like a selfless tanuki in my presence, from the initial pity to now affection. Everything progressed so naturally, no girl could dislike him. I arranged to meet Shinmu's father. In the coffee shop, I gazed at the man in the suit and gently asked him, I heard that your wife used to be a diplomat, quite formidable and impressive on the international stage. Narrowing his eyes, he asked, why bring this up? Now, confined to the house, she has become a housewife, her figure and thoughts both dwindling, unable to keep up with the times, which you find repulsive. You've come to realize that it was her vibrant spirit you loved, not the nagging, tiresome woman she has become, right? Shut up. He tried to interrupt, I ignored him, and with a smile, I continued, sadly, it was by your own doing that this tragedy was crafted. I didn't know if he had affairs, but judging by his demeanor, it seemed likely, the passionate love once shared had fizzled out, lost to mundane domestic squabbles. He must have regretted, wondering why after getting everything his way. Perfection still eluded him. Let Shinmu go, I said softly, he suffered enough because of you and your wife. Your dissatisfaction shouldn't be his burden, if you remain oblivious. I smiled faintly, Mr. Shen, my politeness now is only because you are Shinmu's father. If I find out you mean to harm him, I won't let you off. He didn't react angrily. Instead, he slumped into his seat, appearing dazed. I voiced the thoughts he might have been harboring. Do you wonder if your wife had been as tough as me? Things might not have ended this way. You're mistaken. If I were in her place, facing someone like you, it would end in mutual destruction, Mr. Shen. Anyone falling into your hands would end up miserable. This angered him. He jumped up, ready to strike, but my bodyguard intervened and subdued him. It was quite embarrassing for a man of 50 to be pinned down by a bodyguard. With a light chuckle, I repeated my earlier words, Mr. Shen, I am not your wife, not a soft target you can manipulate. I'll say it once more, stay away from Shinmu, otherwise. I poured a cup of scalding coffee over his head. I will never let you go. Although I don't condone violence, I must admit, it can indeed solve many problems. He couldn't contend with me, the scion of an old, powerful family in Jiangqing, and could only disappear, harboring resentment. After the wedding with Shinmu, he playfully rolled around with me on the marital bed, laughing foolishly like a child. Wan, he murmured in disbelief. I've finally married you, idiot, I said, patting his back. You've had too much to drink, go take a shower. He went off to the bathroom with a silly grin while I slipped into the lingerie I had bought especially for our wedding night, posing on the bed as I waited for him. I must admit, compared to Shinmu, I really am quite something. The moment he saw me, his eyes lit up like an untamed dog, eagerly rushing towards me. Exhausted as I was, he remained spirited, drawing close and showering me with gentle kisses. While kissing, he chuckled and affectionately called me baby. I drifted into a deep sleep. That night, I had a terrible dream. I dreamed of Shinmu's past life. After I ran away from the wedding, his father came to provoke him, boasting proudly, look. You'll soon be unable to resist dragging her back and locking her up, just like I did with your mother. Stop pretending. Your true nature is that of a greedy madman. Whatever your mother is now, that will be her future too. She will be driven mad by your torment. I saw Shinmu in agony, clutching his head and repeatedly growling, lying in a room filled with my pictures, his expression fierce, repeatedly saying no. He didn't want to hurt me, so he resolutely chose to end his own life. I woke up startled, my back drenched in cold sweat. Opening my eyes, Shinmu was holding me, his sleeping face serene. I touched his handsome brows and eyes, then got out of bed. Standing in front of that locked room, I stealthily took his bunch of keys and tried them one by one. The door opened. I stepped into a room that nearly mirrored my nightmare. Shinmu's suicide was probably a self-obliteration, born from the immense pressure and his disgust at his own genes. He watched the walls full of my photos, his wrists bleeding profusely, feeling life slipping away, his gaze tenderly touching upon my smiling face. In his last moments, His eyes were also filled with me. I remembered the trending topics from a past life. Top lover really wasn't wrong at all. Even now, I have no idea where Shinmu's love for me originated. He wouldn't tell me, no matter how many times I asked. Perhaps there should be some secrets between spouses, if he didn't want to talk about it. I wouldn't ask further. Won. Turning around, the previously sleeping Shinmu stood behind me against the light. He seemed a bit downcast, asking me nervously, "Do you think I'm a pervert?" I shook my head and walked over to grasp his cold hand. "Why are you awake? You weren't here." He sounded so aggrieved. The bed was cold. I couldn't help but laugh. When we first met, he had a cold and distant demeanor, unsure of how to respond to me. Now, he had become quite adept at acting spoiled. Whether children or adults, anyone who experiences favoritism naturally shows a whining, childlike demeanor. Realizing this, he tugged at my sleeve again, cautiously asking, "Do you think I'm a pervert?" "Not at all, it's just quite novel." I spoke honestly. "I didn't expect you to have liked me from so early on." "You're not upset with me. Why would I be upset when you like me?" Shinmu's cheeks flushed as he wrapped his arms around my waist. "You're so good to me. Does that mean you'd indulge me no matter what I do?" "I just trust that you wouldn't do anything to harm me." I turned around and wrapped my arms around his neck. "I trust your character." For someone who would rather hurt himself than harm me in the slightest, I refuse to speculate with any malice. True affection is rare in this world, and mutual love even more so. I cherish Shinmu's feelings just as much as he cherishes mine. When a favored cub feels threatened that its favored status might be stolen, it will go mad without hesitation, just like now, Shinmu's attitude towards Liangxing. It took a great deal of effort to keep him from throwing away the gift from Liangxing. Liangxing had sent me a set of pajamas he knitted himself, embroidered with a small heart on the chest. It was both tender and suggestive. Shinmu wanted to go crazy when he saw it, but I glared at him, and he sat back down on the couch. Looking dejected, I ignored him and picked up the pajamas to look at them. "What's so good about it?" he muttered, then leaned in and hugged me. His large frame enveloped me, his warm breath on my neck, a bit disgruntled, but he dared not speak out, only able to softly call out, "Wife, it's all right." I held his hand with a headache and handed him the pajamas. "You take care of it, don't throw it away." It would be too awkward to let him know, so Shinmu cut it up, venting his frustration. Cutting it to shreds, I watched silently for a moment, then couldn't help asking, "Do you have a grudge against Liangxing?" He paused, then grunted in a low voice, "I've always disliked him. Despite being so close to you, he's still entangled with other women, not faithful at all." He talked about his girlfriend. I should have a boyfriend too. Shinmu's double standards almost made me laugh, but it didn't seem right, so I held it back. "It doesn't matter now," I chuckled softly to comfort him. "Now that I'm with you, he can't get in the way, right?" Shinmu's face flushed completely. He turned his head away and quietly murmured in agreement. I didn't specifically treat his depression, I just treated him as a normal person, trying my best to make him happy, pampering him like a child, giving him plenty of security. He naturally got much better. The inferiority and sensitivity brought by his family upbringing, I completely compensated for him, making him increasingly dependent on me and more confident. My assistant talked to me about it. "Actually, I always feel that it's not good for the boss to attach his personal emotions to another person, but there's really no helping it. He might just be love-struck." He didn't dare to complete the sentence, and I didn't help him finish it. Understanding was enough. "Actually, I also think it's not good. His spiritual core is someone else, not himself, so if something happens to me, he wouldn't be able to continue living." I sighed, but life is never perfect. Since I've accepted him, I should also accept the diversity of human character traits that he represents. I don't want to force him to change anything. In a normal intimate relationship, both parties should derive mental pleasure and richness, not painful change. I hope he can be happy. As for the rest, those are trivial matters. On our 3rd anniversary, I found out I was pregnant. Shinmu was very nervous, even slightly despondent, too anxious to sleep. I couldn't help but ask him what was wrong. He held me, clearly upset and pitiful, and said, "Honey, I'm afraid I won't be a good father. What if I can't raise our child well? Will you blame me later?" "Never," I stroked his head. "You will always be more important than the child. A child born into a family like ours will certainly not starve. What they become in the future, how they live, that's up to them. Brother, we are the ones meant to be together for life." His eyes widened, as if he wanted to say something, but he struggled to articulate his thoughts. After a moment, he muttered. Wife, you're so strange. Perhaps, in East Asia, once people have children, they often see themselves as candles burning for their children, spending their lives paving the way for them. I don't want that. Life is just a few decades. If we don't live for ourselves, how dull that would be. Shinmu and I are different. He longs for a family. In his mind, a gentle wife and children, whether obedient or noisy, represent the most beautiful vision of happiness. Actually, I think you'll do very well, I told Shinmu. All the things you yearned for in your childhood will be fulfilled in your child, and you will treat him very well, and treating the child well will, in turn, heal his own once sad and difficult childhood. That's why I'm willing to have this child, for him. Shinmu held me and whispered, you are the most important. I just want a baby, and I will treat him very well. I smiled and said to him, I believe you. I believe he will do well, be happy, and live a long life. I will be there with him, watching him achieve success and enjoy a happy life. We will have a very good future. Epilogue. Shinmu never told Gu-won that the first time he saw her was behind the high school campus, near a foul-smelling ditch. He was dirty and smelly at the time, starving, rummaging through a garbage bin for food. Then he met Gu-won. She looked like a fairy then, standing at the end of the alley in a white dress, watching him quietly for a moment, her eyes showing compassion. She pulled out 2,000 yuan and gave it to him. Go find something else to do. Her voice was gentle. Stop doing things you don't like. Shinmu didn't know why she helped him, maybe out of sympathy, pity, or perhaps just because she was passing by and was bored. All he knew was that Gu-won saved his life. With that 2,000 yuan, he bought a ticket to another place, worked day and night, and with his exceptional talent, made a fortune in stocks during the last wave of the internet boom. When he returned to Jiangqing, he was in a suit and surrounded by a group of advisors, and Gu-won, she had blossomed beautifully, changing boyfriends every 2 months, living life lavishly. Shinmu wasn't surprised. He felt that a cute and lovely girl like Gu-won was born to be cherished by many, but it also made him sad, perhaps due to the baseness and shamelessness in his genes. He often felt a beast-like impulse to rush over, lock her up, and force her. That wasn't right. He was also trying to restrain himself. This restraint led to a mental struggle. He developed a severe mental illness. Forcing a marriage with the Gu family was his desperate decision. He longed too much to embrace that divine girl. Loneliness tormented him daily, nearly driving him to extinction. But if Gu-won was unwilling, he wouldn't force her. He didn't want to become a shameless man like his father. Then, one day, the young girl threw herself into his arms. Shinmu felt it was all worth it for this lifetime. In the 6th year of their marriage, their child was 2 years old. Shinmu dreamt of his past life. He died in that cold, gloomy, and dreary room filled with haze. He saw Gu-won placing a vibrant rose next to his corpse. That night, Shinmu spent the whole night smoking on the balcony, his eyes bloodshot as he stared at the bright moon in the sky, round like the mooncake his wife made last year. Shinmu felt an inexplicable sadness. If his wife had run away from their marriage, then his death would seem quite natural. The normally composed Shinmu couldn't fathom the extremities and despair of that time, but felt it was somewhat normal. A madman, after all, could do anything, and in this life, his wife hadn't run away. What's wrong? Gu-won wrapped her arms around his waist and nuzzled him. You've seemed off since this afternoon. Shinmu felt a bit wronged and wanted to act coquettishly with his wife. But when he opened his mouth, he didn't know what to say. He lifted Gu-won into his arms, she exclaimed, her legs instinctively wrapping around his lean waist, and she couldn't help but slap him lightly. Hooligan. Shinmu's cheeks turned pink, and he nuzzled her neck for a long time, then felt it unnecessary to ask. Gu-won didn't like him bringing up the past. She always said, let's focus on making our future better. So he didn't want to dwell on it anymore, no matter what, in this life. She was by his side. With a smile, he said, I really love you, wife.